Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is a truly big game. It's a very girthy game. And of everyone that I stream with, Jono's the only one that actually played it. So we decided it would be a better idea to reach out to other people to get some conversations going about this game, because there is a lot to talk about with this game, and not just the Twitter drama, even though I'm sure that will come up here, but there's a lot to go over with this one. So, first of all, I want to thank Lord Bofa and Shocker for joining. Appreciate you guys. Jono, you don't get a thank you. You're required by legal binding contracts of slavery. But with all that said, I think we just go ahead and hop into it. Now, Jono, I'm pretty sure your opinion hasn't changed too much. You're very positive towards the game overall, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just maybe a few things here and there, maybe a particular different choice of words, but I'm totally with 100% with what I said at the very beginning when I had my first 3 hours of playing that game. I'm just totally enamored. Absolutely adore this game. It's currently my game of the year, but still got a long ways to go for the end of the year, so might change.
That's right. We all know it's going to be the Yasuke simulator. Shocker, real briefly, what did you think of it?
Oh man, highly anticipating this game. I have a lot. I'm going to be throwing a lot of mud at it. But the thing is my passion comes from me wanting it to be a 10 out of 10, even though my rating would be more of an 8 or a 9 out of 10. You know, we're not getting political. Like, what was that stupid game journal that gave it a 1 because of its drama with
Eurogamer?
I think it was Eurogamer.
Yeah, I gave it a 3. I think, but
none of that here.
Some low.
The irony of Eurogamer giving a European game, fucking bastard.
Yeah, right? Yeah, European culture.
What about you, Lord Bofa?
You know, I really have enjoyed it. I'm probably the least deep into the actual game of the three of us here. But yeah, really enjoy it. There's a lot of things that I like. There's a lot of things that, or at least some things that really rub me the wrong way or I don't like. I've gone on big complaint rants about things like the lockpicking system, things like that. Yeah, overall, I've really enjoyed it. You know, it's really easy to list the things you don't like versus the things you do like, because you notice things you don't like more rather than things you do like. So I've tried to notice things that I like as well more often than I don't. It's just it's hard sometimes to do that. In terms of game of the year, like Jono said, personally, I'd love for this to be game of the year. If GTA 6 comes out this year, I think it's going to be a pretty big uphill battle to beat something like that. But I mean, I want it to be game of the year. But there are some issues I think that would hold it back in terms of that, unless GTA 6 also is a really bad launch. But it's modern gaming, so you know it probably is going to be a really bad launch. But
I mean, not a negative thing, but this game is not complete at all either.
No, absolutely
it's
not.
It's so funny how incomplete our 200-hour play of the game. We're not playing a complete game, even though we're all putting 200 hours in it. They said that they're missing side quests that they need to add soon within the month. The irony of,
wow. I've gone through all stuff, and there's been many times where I've been like, oh, because there's just stuff that's weird in terms of rendering or not being there or running into things that come out of nowhere. I've minor other gripes about it that I'm sure we'll get into.
It's got classic Bethesda like quest bugs.
Yeah,
that's if you go to the tournament too late, it doesn't tell you be by the tourney by 8 a.m. If you go there at 9, the quest just won't work. It won't work, but you have to be there early, but it doesn't tell you that. Like, it's stuff like that where the quests can kind of bug out. Then you have to save scum and go back and do it again because, you know, you did things out of order and the game didn't like it. And it's going to it's like stepping on a Lego. It's really annoying, but, you know, story's good.
Shot probably the most critical of it. Do you want to start going through some of the things that irks you about this game?
Yeah, I know I'm going to be the heel here, but I still love the game. But first things first, I think the combat is actually not an improvement. I think they simplified the combat and they made it more slower. So the first game was very fast-paced, and if you did a perfect block or a perfect parry, it did it in like slow motion so that the flow of the game was still fast paced. While in KCD2, the enemies and Henry himself are just overall slower. Well, they'll slice and then they'll sit there and they'll wait for him to riposte, and then you dodge and they'll sit there and they'll wait for you to come in to attack them. And every time I've argued with someone that it's not better than the first one, they say no, but it's more simplified. And it's like, well, that's the argument. It's they had to simplify. I think they wanted to simplify it because so many people complained about how janky they thought the first game was. So
Yeah,
that's one of my biggest complaints.
I'd have to agree with that. Compared to KCD1, they obviously everybody's saying it's simplified. You got less angles of attack for sure, and as well as I think the intention. It can irk a lot of people. I can definitely understand. I think the intention for the developers was that in order to have everybody enjoy a fluid and have an entertaining combat all the time, whether you're at a low level or a high level, it all still functions fluently and beautifully, and that it doesn't it allows people to easily grab it but still have to struggle to get that mastery of it while getting all the skills and such. But it does get to a certain point in the game once you get like to 28 to 30 skill level with a weapon and your strength is high enough, you're basically just plowing through everybody. It is nothing, especially when you got all the maxed out gear. You're becoming like a super soldier.
The first game had that issue where because like Elder Scrolls scales because there were some people when you would play like Elder Scrolls, like you would level up but not give yourself any attribution or points to make the game easier, because as you leveled up the game got harder, the enemies got more skilled. In KCD it doesn't do that. When you get stronger you just dominate. So that was the issue with the first game too.
What about you, Boba?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's obvious that the combat's been simplified. Clearly, I don't necessarily know if that, in terms of a business standpoint, is a bad thing. Just because let's be real here about what happened. What happened was they made their first game. They had their unique combat system that they came out with and all that. A bunch of people played it. They really liked it. They were kind of griping about the combat system, felt that it was clunky, things like that. They decided to make the sequel, right? And they read all that feedback, and they knew that there was going to be probably a big swath of audience that are normie gamers, and they're going to want to pick this up. And a lot of them probably haven't played the first one. And so to try to be more appealing to that normie gamer audience, something that's simpler to grasp, and even though it's still in the spirit of what they were originally doing, they simplified it down a little bit. And I think the whole strategy was to simplify it to appeal to those kinds of normie gamers that aren't used to that kind of combat system. And it is, even if you've played it before, you still have to adjust to this in the beginning because it's different than anything else probably marketable right now.
And I kept hitting Q the first like 4 hours. Kept hitting Q to fucking block when they changed the block button. There's that kind of a learning curve. But I agree with you. I lack for a better term, just kind of call it pandering. I just feel like they pandered more to a normie audience, and that makes me sad. And I think that goes with the same other controversial thing of Henry being bisexual and Hans being gay. I think they made a good game. They make a good sequel, but you are pandering to a normie gamer audience, and me, a big fan of your game, an actual person who likes. I mean, like, how everybody had this conversation with their friends where we wanted a video game where you had to aim where your swings would come from. Everyone thought that was such a cool idea. Imagine you were like a Star Wars game, but you had to hold right on the right stick to swing right, or hold left on the left stick to swing left. Like, we all thought of that idea and thought it was cool. We finally get a game that does that really well, and it's an RPG for like based on Elder Scrolls, right? Like, when I talk about Kingdom Come 2, I compare it to The Witcher and the Elder Scrolls. And I don't like putting my faith in these old guard companies who cleaned out their dev teams. I don't look forward to Elder Scrolls continuing to be good. I don't look forward to Witcher 4 ever coming out or it being good. I want games to be inspired by those and just make new stories. And that's exactly what Kingdom Come was. It was the Elder Scrolls. It was a unique combat system that I liked, and I wanted all those things expanded on, and the story continued. And so I got the story continued, what I like, but I don't like the oversimplification of gameplay just to appease to a bigger audience, because that's not what a sequel should be. It's dumbing down a sequel. So that makes me sad.
Is there any other mechanics you felt was simplified apart from the combat? Not necessarily simplified, maybe just went in a radically different direction. Like you mentioned lockpicking as well.
Oh, yeah. I never had an issue with the lockpicking, but the lockpicking is super frustrating. And they changed it to be more simple. So the lockpicking in the beginning was actually way worse than the lockpicking in 2. Because 2, they basically, like halfway through like a year within the game, they had an update. And they said, by the way, if you want easy mode for the lockpicking, here you go. We just made the option to make lockpicking easier. And then that's the system that they brought over to the second one.
I was still terrible at it. That's how bad I was at it.
It's annoying.
That is a skill issues on me, but I just absolutely hate that lockpicking system. I gotta be honest with you. There's certain things that you don't have to reinvent the wheel on. And this is what I go back to this on this subject all the time. If you look at every game, especially RPGs, look at almost every game, what kind of lockpick system do they use? Use a pressure system. It shows you little pins and your little levers, move it around. Or I mean, you got Elder Scrolls that uses their system that a lot of people have also adopted with the rotating and pressure and all that. This whole like wheel that you gotta hold the button here and then move it around. It's the equivalent of trying to like give yourself a handy while juggling.
Oh, like, you were on console, huh?
Yeah,
it's way easier with the mouse.
Yeah, I prefer playing this game with a controller, and everything else I've always used.
I had friends who would play on controller, and then they'd pull out their mouse, and then they would do the lockpick with the mouse, and then put the mouse down.
Do you want to?
I probably need to, yeah.
Do you want to explain why this lockpick system is so arse?
Like I said, depend on what which end of it, for the mouse and keyboard or gamepad. When it comes to the gamepad itself, it uses the twin stick system where you have to use one of the analog sticks to position where you want the one piece of the lock to angle it on the right, and there'll be an icon that circles around on the lock. And once it goes gold, that's where you start rotating with the other analog stick, and you have to follow with the right analog stick on the same place and keep that icon gold all the way until you turn the lock to unlock it. And I must be the odd man one out here on this, because I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I had no problem getting the hang of it. At least for KCD1, yeah, it was difficult, but with this one, I had a very easy time getting into it. Started working on locks, and once got my thievery level to a high enough point, hard and very hard. I think it was like 17, 18 when I started doing hard and very hard locks, no problem, without even having to break any of my lock picks. I guess each their own. Must be different skills for different folks.
It is fairly. It does get easier as you go on and you level up in your skill in it. It's just it's a very big learning curve, and it's hard to get into, and you fail a lot when you first start, to the point where it deters you a lot from trying to. You're just like, screw this.
Well, you get experience for breaking a lock. For failing, you get experience.
Yeah, you get that too. But I mean,
So that felt good in the first game. That all felt good and natural. Like, I agree with Jono. I actually like the lockpicking. I don't have an issue with it. I'm okay with people not liking the system too. But in the first game, it was, you're a peasant, you're an idiot, you need to get experience and start learning. So failing lockpicking, failing archery, failing combat, all that felt, we're getting into another subject, unfortunately, but all that felt
picking a ton of herbs and flowers.
Oh, yeah, leg day, yeah. Picking herbs, like all that felt natural in the first game, but in the second game, it's like, okay, well, Henry knows how to pick locks. He knows how to fight with a sword. He knows all these things. He knows how to make herbal decoctions and potions. But because he fell off a cliff, he forgot. Yeah. He forgot how to pick locks because he fell off a cliff and landed on it, dude. Like, that felt terrible. Like, it's like, well, no, but like the progressional system feels good. It's like, yeah, it feels good if it's a new character. That's why every Elder Scrolls game you play as some random prisoner, a random guy. You're not playing the same guy every time because you can't relearn skills you already learned in the first game. So that's a big thing that really annoyed me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. With the with that fall that they decided to use as the plot point to bring you back all the way to level 5 for everything, it works perfectly fine for all the physical attributes and skills that you have. On the other hand, it's the mental abilities and attributes and skills that you have that it just does not work whatsoever.
No,
and that's how it mistranslated with that. Yeah, it's a tough. Yeah, it's a not an easy one to do. They wanted to bring everybody back to square one on that and to rebuild your character.
But it feels good for people who didn't play the first game. When they play only the second game, like, they get into it and they love it. And it's like, that's cool, but the point of a sequel is to continue the story, and it's just immersion breaking when you have to witness that.
Yeah,
they could have just bumped the numbers on everything. They could have just bumped the numbers on everything and been like,
you make it harder
of the first game, and
you
just
harder.
Gotta get better.
Yeah.
It's level, it's like I don't even remember what the end level was, but like, it's level 25, but it's really like level 1. You know what I mean? So
my suggestion was you can only carry 3 skills over from the first game. That was my suggestion.
Yeah.
So it was another subject. Sorry, but I don't like thievery being in the lock picking skill. That's another conversation we'll bring up later. But for example, you can carry over blunt, archery, lockpicking, or stealth. Like, there should have been 3 skills you could carry over, and then it'd be as if Henry didn't start doing those things until the second game anyway. That's what I thought they would have done, which would have been cool.
Scholarship alone, that should have been kept. Like, what the heck? Yeah. But to bring it back to bugs, we talked about the questing, we talked about a few other things, but we didn't talk about the pathing. There wasn't a big issue overall, but how many? I gotta ask you guys, how many times did Mutt get in the fucking way of the door for you guys?
Oh, how many times did you run him over just riding your horse?
Oh, frig, countless times.
It made me so sad. He would run in front of the fucking horse. The horse would step on him, and he would run away. And I'd be like, no, don't
cry.
I do not like carable animal companions.
Oh,
I hate
it. You're no longer the heel. You are now.
Yeah, everyone hates you. Boo!
Yeah. Go ahead. Why are you booing me? I'm right.
Right.
I do not like it. In any kind of sense, the whole caring for one, caring for a few, or the whole farming stuff that they do in like freaking Hogwarts Legacy, where I was like, you could have had a functional Quidditch system instead of this stupid stuff. Why are we doing this? But anyway, that's a whole other rant. I didn't really deal a lot with Mutt so far. Honestly, I kind of forget that he's there because
you can tell him to go home and he'll just stay at the devil's
away.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I don't need you. I don't want you. There's really no point to you. But yeah, it's really that, or taking care of upgrading the horses. One bug that we're talking about bugs. One bug that I did run into is that when I was, and I guess this is a bit spoilers, if we got people not wanting spoilers here.
If you don't want spoilers, fuck off. The game's almost a month old.
That is also
get 100 hours in, you scrub.
But when you're in Von Burgo's castle, right after the betrayal and all that, and you and everybody else is sneaking out and everything, I had a bug where after our initial conversation outside of the cells, we're down there in that cellar, like, for some reason, the guards above, like 2 or 3 guards, just immediately rushed in and started attacking us. And no matter how many times, I reloaded that scene, past that conversation, it kept on happening.
Wait, where were you? Were you at the Samin house, or were you already in the prison?
I was already in the prison. Like, we had just been interrogated or whatever, and Catherine broke us out, and those guards, for whatever reason, they kept coming in every single time and attacking us. And it was a bug. So I had to reload back into the battle sequence and do the whole battle over again. That leads to us being captured. Do that, and then go into that. And then it worked fine. But it was kind of annoying.
That whole quest is so bugged. Because I was telling Jono, that wedding scene skipped for me entirely. The second I got into the wedding, guards attack me, boom, in prison. A whole hour and a half. How long is the wedding scene where you dance with the girls and the stuff?
Long.
Yeah, I can go up to 2 hours of all
Yeah,
the
I
stuff
did
that you can do in that game, in that sequence.
It went
like a
straight to
2-hour stream
prison.
that
It
was just
skipped the
that.
whole thing for me. I couldn't play the wedding scene. And Reddit kind of came to the conclusion that it's because if you kill these group of humans that seem optional to kill, basically there's a tavern, right? And the tavern's not interested in the war. They're too far away from Rattay and where all the war is. They're not interested in it. There's leftover human armies that left Sigismund because Sigismund can't really afford to pay them anymore. So they're kind of just a squabbering band of humans, right? You, who's played one, says, "Oh, human, I'm gonna kill him without second ask," right? But in the tavern, it kind of makes you kind of sympathize with the humans and kind of be like, so like the people that are in this,
them,
they humanize them a bit, and the people in the tavern don't want to. They say, "Hey, you're humans. You guys are fighting a war. You're on King Sigismund. We don't like you. Get out of here." And it seems optional of whether you want to be nice to them and humanize them or kick them out, but it's impossible to kick them out of the tavern. And if you kill them, they pull their swords on you. If you attack them, the guards attack you and you go to jail. And so if you follow them to their camp and you kill them in their camp, you have a huge wanted and this huge amount of civilians that the game claims that you committed, to the point when you go to the wedding, they say, "Oh, by the way, you're a criminal. You can't be at this wedding. You go straight to jail." But the game doesn't tell you that. It just glitches. It's really weird. That whole wedding, yeah.
There are several spots where, and you were kind of mentioning this before, where they don't give you information that you should have, and they just like expect you to continue on at this point. But then you're like, you think it's not a continue, like you can just go off, do your own thing. And then they're like, "Oh, too much time passed. And it's already happened." And it's like, "Oh, okay." Because I came across that too when what's his name, that minor lord, Samin, and his like captain of his guard or whatever. I was supposed to help them track down those guys. And the first time I did it or whatever, too much time passed and I ended up like missing out on it, so I had to reload and be like, "Oh, I guess I can't do that." So
yeah, that's unfortunately that's more of a feature than a bug. That was also in KCD1, if I remember correctly, where if you would trigger certain aspects of a quest, that would like set off the timer, and it would be at this certain morning or at this certain time that the things would happen. It would allow, the game does allow you to like do whatever you want and spend weeks on end and doing what you want, but once you start triggering those certain sequences in the quest, that's when the timer starts ticking. And unfortunately,
and some
sucks for that situation.
Some spaces they're not 100% clear on where those happens, and sometimes it doesn't happen at the start. Sometimes it happens in the middle, and it's like, why is it started here? And then there's also certain bugs that are features, right? That I think I've talked with you before about, Jono, just in passing, like the torches. Right? If you don't know in this game, if you don't have a torch out at night, especially in the townships, the guards get mad at you. If you continue not having a torch out, they'll attack you eventually. There is a game of dice, basically poker table gambling, stuff like that is in front of taverns. If you go play dice and it's at sunset, right? It gets dark enough to where it's dark out. The guards, and you don't have a torch. By the way, you can't equip a torch while you're sitting there.
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, it should be active if you go. I
tried to do that. It wasn't letting me.
Oh, really? In the first game, that's how the first game worked.
Yeah, but like, so I didn't have a torch out, and it got night, and then the guards got mad at me, and then it went on too long. Then I got attacked. Then I got forced out of the game. Lost my money. Had to save. Had to reload to save again. But yeah, little things you learn out about that are like, they're not bugs, they're features, but it's kind of like, is this really needed? But I understand it, but
I gotta ask it, are you playing this on Xbox or PlayStation?
I'm playing this on PC.
On PC, okay, straight PC. Okay, that's interesting, because I have heard that Xbox consoles are having a little harder time with certain things.
That's so weird. I've never heard of just one console having issues.
It's perhaps because of the software that they're using with I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you,
But
honestly.
usually it's PlayStation
It's
that has the
Xbox,
issue.
man.
Why would Xbox and PC not have the same issues and smoothness?
Yeah, you'd think they wouldn't have any problems, but alas, there it is. Probably because of the time of the hardware or something. Maybe something with the software. But either way, that's unfortunate. But to bring it back to the tavern thing, like at least the bugs that I'm hearing from you guys just with the last two, I didn't experience these at all because at least with the Cumans in the tavern, they never drew their weapons when I started the fight with them. They just went fisticuffs.
But
And
did
that
you win?
Yes.
You won the fist fight.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Wow.
because I went through the Miller quest before experiencing the Cumans at the tavern. That allowed me to unlock the underground fight club that's over there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I did a good enough grinding to get, I think it was like in the mid-teens for my unarmed skill. So that allowed me to give me the upper hand against the Cumans.
Well, because the people in the tavern that help you, like, they die like right away from me. Like, they get punched once or twice and they're gone. So it's you versus 5 people. And then it just like it's rough.
It's not
but
easy.
If you fight for too long, the guards will pull their weapons on you, and then the Cumans pull their weapons on you.
Oh dang!
So that's what was annoying, because I was
must
still
have
in the
gotten lucky.
game. I was still fighting them, and it's like, dude, well, this is taking too long because I don't have those master strikes for
That's unfortunate.
fighting.
With all the stuff you guys have touched on, I think it's pretty much time to go into the meat and potatoes, which is the story of this. But before that, you briefly mentioned it, Shocker. I think we should just get the... Sounds weird to say. Get the gay out of the way. Move the gay out of the way.
Get the gay out of the way.
So, just to clarify, what happened was... You know what? I'll let Shocker explain it, because he's the one that's probably the most critical of everything, apart from Lord Bova, who hates dogs.
Yo, I mean, like, there's hating gays and there's hating dogs. That's unforgivable.
I like dogs, okay? I'm not. Don't epic mic me, okay, man? I don't.
Yeah, it's gay.
I like dogs, all right. My wife isn't a big fan. She likes the idea of dogs, but I
I thought you were
like
going to say
dogs.
something completely different then.
No, my, yeah.
Whoa, wait.
I thought that conversation was going somewhere else. I'm out.
Yeah. Just joking.
Anyway, yeah, go on.
Oh, okay. So I think it's a bit of a like. There was an episode of South Park. I forgot what episode it was, but it's when the Swedish guy is like trying to take over the world, and he's just like, people don't get mad at opinions; they get mad at the opinion of someone else having opinion of someone else, and it's like that circle of just reactioning kind of thing, right? And so I blatantly, I don't like when like in my video, like I make the joke, like, what is an RPG? It's a role-playing game. That could mean a lot of things. Either you create the character and you role-play as the character you created, which would be like Dragon Age and Elder Scrolls, or you role-play an established person, right? Like Geralt of Rivia is a person with his own lore, with his own history, with his own backstory. And Henry, I think, is more of, you play as a character. You play as Henry, a person, and you control Henry. And you can only do things that Henry would do. And so to make him bisexual in the sequel of the game, when he wasn't gay in the first game, just, it doesn't feel natural to me. And it feels like pandering to me. They got the good headlines from IGN and all those other like progressive journos that weren't going to give him a 10 out of 10, even though this game deserves a 9, 8, 10 out of 10. I think it deserves Game of the Year. It's amazing. But it really looks like they play ball with those people and made a good game in the process. And so then the internet kind of spirals into this like, oh, well, it's just optional. Oh, it's just a side quest. And it's like, no, it's not a side quest. Like, it's the main quest. Like, in the beginning, like, this game is about Henry and Hans and their adventures together. And if you want to say something positive about Hans, it has to be something homeless. There has to be a little heart with the little hands next to it. You
Nice
can't say,
cock.
yeah, nice cock, bro. Like, the first time you romance him is basically, you either say, you're a fucking idiot, or, hey, I don't really care that you're crying. Let's move on. We're men. We're men. I mean, we're not going to talk about it. Or it's like the romanceable option is just like the good dialogue, where it's just like, hey, you know what? We went through some scruffs. We went through some bad things together. We had a fight, we had an argument, but dude, we got through this. All right, I'm your page, you're my friend, you're the last friend I have left. So we have to stick together if we're gonna move through this. And I'm just like, what part of that was gay? Like, if you want to establish a close friendship with him, it has to be homosexual. You can't have a game where a story really of just two men being friends. It has to be homosexual. And that's what rubs me the wrong way. But what you have is you have people straw manning these arguments by getting retards like John De La Rosa and Melanie Mack, and you say, well, look at this fucking idiot. So all these people are fucking idiots. It's like, that's what straw manning is.
Yeah, and that happened big time with this game. I think we talked about it a few times on stream. It's like, you've got like people that have legitimate criticisms, but they're just completely buried. Like, way you have to sift through the mountains of shit retardation to get to it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, most people aren't going to do that. Most people are just going to look at this pile of shit and say, I'm not diving deeper into the pile of shit. Even though we're at the bottom of that pile of shit is where people like you are. Basically, you got covered in shit by furries and fake Christian lesbians.
What a terrible place to be. But yeah, I agree with you. It's totally out of character, and on top of that, it's supposed to be a historical, like a capture of a certain part of history, like real history going on. Only like 10-15% of this story is actually like pure fiction, completely designed by the developers themselves. But yet they go at this, the company decides to go at this and straight up pandering for the progressive side of the gaming audience. It's terrible. It's really disappointing to see. All they could have done is just leave it as it is, have this bromance character that they had between Hans and Henry, and not try to just break the fiction just so they can pander to particular individuals. The creation of their fiction should be just about creating the story for the audience. But then again, you start, that being said, they can also argue that it's so that they can entertain, so everybody can have their own Henry, whether he is bisexual. It's really bad, because I get that you want to be your own Henry. Actually, I just found out this today looking up a few reviews. Hans is not the only gay romance character that you can. If you guys remember the sword master that is over at the Trotsky Castle. After you go through the dungeons, the prisoner stuff there, save Hans, you meet up with a swordsman who's out there. Black Bartosz, I believe his name is.
What?
The sword master is gay.
A sword master.
Wow! I thought you were gonna say the German Meister. I was gonna lose my shit. I was gonna lose my shit if they made the German gay. I'm like, no, that's the Meister.
No. The Meister's fine. He's safe.
I love
no romance with him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he is really good.
I like him.
But yeah, not a peep about from people about that character. It's all about the Hans. But that's it. It would have been I'll let that slide. At least for my opinion, I'll let that slide. But Hans is so, even in the canon, within the story of KCD2 itself, not just real history of Jean Patak of friggin' Perkstein, the actual person who lived until he 20, 30 years old. He died very young.
Cool.
They should have just left it as it is. You see all over. It's friggin' romancing women. The first hour into it, he hears a woman and he's like a dog, man, just sniffing down the water. That's it. It's great. That's what a lot of people enjoyed the character about him though, and he goes through a lot of great character development in this game, where you see how he's an absolute fucking snob at the beginning, even in the first one. But you start to like him a little bit, and he gets kicked. He gets kicked to the curb. He gets beaten when he's down as well, and he gets treated like a common criminal. And it really starts to show this change of perspective, and later down the road, he gets this phobia, which allows him, he more normal as an individual. He's not just blue-blooded. He's just like everybody else. And then all of a sudden, he gets this whiplash. And I think I'll leave that for later. Out of spoilers, you get this complete whiplash because of the call to action, because he's blue-blooded normal. And it's at first he would have been like, all right, cool, I would have done with that. But no, he becomes more of a stronger individual overall. And it's great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And the actor has thrived. The actor who actually played, Luke Dale.
He's awesome.
He loves this character so much, and he's he adores the audience, that he's made his own YouTube channel. He's streaming the game now, doing his own playthrough of it. He's got almost 100,000 subscribers. He is absolutely enamored, so in love. I'm just glad to see somebody like completely thrive from all of this. Just to get derailed a little bit.
Funny. That's what's so funny about like Daniel Varva like being like the worst. Like that dude need to put the fucking phone down. Like he couldn't stop insulting people on Twitter to save his life. That's a
whole other.
Should have just screenshotted sales reports and player accounts and just posted them and just been like, "Hey, look at all these numbers, guys."
Those are fine.
And then just leave.
And then you kept punching down on people. It's like, okay, you won, dude. Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's it. Instead of letting the game, speak for itself, he had to go petty and he had to go low blow a lot of folks just because he felt personally insulted from what they said on Twitter. I mean, come on, everybody could say something on Twitter to make noise for something.
He kind of seems like that artist that kind of wanted to make their relationship like homosexual just to kind of piss off like the right people. He seems very like artistic like that, like the kind of like lefty artsy fartsy kind of like personalities that make good art. He kind of just seems like one of those people where I do believe there's a slight percentage that he kind of did it because he wanted to do it to spite certain people. Like I kind of buy that as a possibility.
I think he's just trying to be contrarian. And
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Like as soon as people started complaining about it, he was like, "Well, oh yeah,
well, maybe I will. Maybe I'll suck his dick then. All right, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
I'll give some game guides to IGN there, and they'll repost them.
Oh God! And then tell them how to. Yeah. So like,
it's a good troll.
Social friction and drama always gets attention and clicks, and that's what a lot of people are looking for. And going back to the controversy of the gay stuff, I also want to address the pedo stuff. That's gotta that's gotta end right there. Down at the bottom, I can probably zoom in a little better for you guys, but down at the bottom here, I can't say for certain if this was brought down. But anyways, this should be good enough. At the bottom there,
argumentation gave me brain damage. I just want to say
it was absolutely freaking terrible. I cannot believe people went to such an extent to just try to make stabs at this game.
Once again, people like Shocker Zulu were buried under a pile of shit from fake Christian lesbians and gay furries.
I know, dude. It's bad.
I would recommend everybody who gets to experience the game, I highly recommend to go into the codex of this. The codex in here is like an entire encyclopedia of everything that goes on in the story, as well as in the world of Bohemia at this time. It is absolutely incredible the number of tidbits of information that you can find. It as well shows you all the characters and the fictional characters, who they were inspired from certain individuals in history. And like right here, I cannot say for certain if there was an edit after launch of this game, or this was in the game to begin with. But down at the bottom of here, the codex of young Lord Capon, it says right here, unlike his historical precursor, however, we took the poetic license of making Hans Capon a 20-year-old man in our game.
Is it addendum?
Enough said. Done deal. That's it.
Dude,
we're done.
What's so funny, so like you were saying, let the game market itself. Because the two actors of Henry and Hans market the game wonderfully. Their social media accounts are awesome. They hype the game.
Quite clearly grown men, too.
Yeah, they're grown men. And here, look, General Varva makes things so much worse. His way of dunking on people was, they were passing out girls when they were 12 to make babies. So what's the difference between 16-year-old homosexuals? Like, holy shit, Daniel, stop it. Stop making things fucking worse. That is what you think it is.
The Milo Yiannopoulos.
The meme, it's like Twitter's the only place where you can just say something and someone will go, that's a whole other fucking sentence you just said there.
Yes, dude, that's a whole other thing you just said, Daniel.
Yeah.
What gets me about this is that this argument only exists because a few subset of so-called journalists, games journalists, and games journalists who don't like to call themselves game journalists, who are just YouTubers, sifted through all the information they could find and received all the information they could find to find one little thing that they could amplify and complain about as within the bounds of being politically grotesque in their game. That's all the reason. That's the only reason it exists.
Yeah, because
nobody would look at us and care other than that.
That's why they're called grifters, though, because I will see Henry's gay, that's a red flag for me. I saw Musa, that's a red flag. Like, I see things that I genuinely believe are red flags, but then they have to keep looking for fucking fake shit to make up, and it makes everybody else look like an idiot for actually having, like, genuine concerns.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep,
Well,
absolutely.
With all that, I guess go ahead and get into the story. I don't know where you want to begin with that.
It's Game of Thrones, and it's done well. My favorite part about the story was you get kind of double-crossed by some lord, right? And then if you're paying attention, because there's another thing too, like John was talking about, the codex are cool. In the first game and the second game, there are actual books that you could read about the history of the land, and those are fun to read. And if you read those in the first game, you can grasp the story very well in the second game. So if you kind of understand what's going on, there's a like 3-way of double crossing. Like the enemy, who's a gay guy, who's actually one of my favorite characters. The gay dude is, I love Ishvan Tong. He's so well written. He's so cool. But he double crosses a lord, and then he double crosses a band of thieves, and then he double crosses them to go back to the lord, right? So the story gets convoluted, and it doesn't spoon feed you anything. You could be very lost in the story. And I don't like when games dumb down things to you and they have to repeat things over and over for the player. But they do it in such a funny way where like all the protagonists are kind of in a room together, and they're like hands on their swords, and they're like, wait, are we friends, enemies? And they go, oh shit, I don't know what we are actually, because we've been double crossed so many times. And then they kind of explain the story, like who's sided with who with each other. And if you ask the same question twice, Henry calls himself an idiot because he already knew that. And like it does a really good setting up of like betrayal, this, and like the pull of the story is to gain. So like it's not a romanticized like hero strikes down Darth Vader and saves the day. It's very much like in the background, how did this one person who wasn't reported in history have a big influence on how a war and debate was settled between two brothers fighting over a throne? So I think it's set up really well.
One thing I will say is that it does set up a lot of good. So it does a good job of giving you payoffs on old enemies as you go through the game, while also setting up conflicts with new enemies. So there's not a big like gap between payoff on something and like not there's it keeps it moving along, keeps you interested as you go along, because while you're getting vengeance on one guy early, there's a new enemy that's being set up later in the game to come along. So it moves you along that way.
It does what The Last of Us tried to do, actually, because Henry has like a big list of people he wants to kill. There are 3 main people that burnt down his hometown of Skalitz, and he said, I'm going to get my father's sword back and kill you with it. That's his motive. But actually getting revenge on some of the enemies are actually optional, and it does a very good, I thought I wanted revenge, but I was wrong. I don't want to do it. Or you could be like, no, fuck it, I'm getting my revenge. Like those 2 pathways are done really well. You do have the freedom to choose which one you want to do. And both are things that Henry would do. That's what I like about that. But yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Jono.
Oh no worries. You guys are here to talk about it just as much as I am. I'd like to hear you guys' opinions on this. But at least for me, the thing I love most about this story, not that it's vast, it's huge, and it involves real history. The civil, basically, what essentially, a fight for the crown that was once King Charles, and now his 2 sons are trying to vie over it. You got the Hungarians invading over to Bohemia. It's amazing. And one thing that I love the most about this is that there are so many main characters in this story that involved. There's like 15, 20 people that are like completely like heavily involved into the main plot, the main thread of the story, especially when you get over to Kuttenberg, the second region. You meet a bunch of these characters. Sorry, I might spoil it for you a little, Bother, but you meet these characters called the Devils. It's a band of basically bandits, brigands, criminals, and they're all led by this. They're led by this guy named the Dry Devil. And these are all, at least the very least, the Dry Devil is a real character in history. And they basically everybody that you meet, other than maybe perhaps Henry, Catherine, Rosa, and Musa.
Henry is real. He's a peasant.
Okay, so he's a real individual. All right, we'll scratch
They
that.
found someone who was born in Skalitz in 1380.
Okay, so
Henry.
Okay, so he's very much like Catherine, where there's an individual who is real in that time.
Yeah.
And made inspirations, taking a few liberties.
So no,
Okay.
it's kind of a
Yeah, well,
gotcha. No, he's not. No one knows anything about this random kid named Henry from Skalitz. But they wanted to find a real name of a real person in that time, which is I think super cool.
Yeah, that was great. Now, a lot of these characters, if they're not real people, they're inspired by real people. Like the two female romance options that you have in this game would be Catherine and Rosa. Both the Rosa character, she's actually based on Bohemian folklore, and with Catherine, she's based on a real person who was married to Ziska, and Ziska, holy moly, that guy is he's a knight, a lord. And there's so much about him in history and his involvement with this civil war going on. It is incredible. That goes on. And that's the same thing for so many other characters. And they make even the lords, it makes such a beautiful story. Like you have to go through and weave across and have to make all these decisions, considering having to try, like for the beginning of the game, you have to try to make an alliance with somebody who's on the other side of the team, on the enemy team. And you got to really have like these have many of these like gray areas, moral judgment decisions. Ultimately, I will say this, the game does have a hard line, what is good, what is evil, and there is a through line that you can weave through that you do the right thing or wrong thing, but the game allows you to make those decisions for yourself and justify them or repent for them.
Before you go on, just to interject, Catherine's the one with the big fat titties, right?
Big titties.
Yeah, she's the one with the cleavage and the blue dress.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
She's
Yeah, I
the
fucked the
MILF.
shit out of her.
Oh yeah, I did.
There was a bit of a
You can see her titties. They're huge, bro. They're fucking huge.
And what her included, and along with Rosa and of course Musa the Islamist character that's involved in the game. He does have a small role in the main story. They all have like forms of controversies, but the more you discover them, the more you see how they are, and more they develop. Well, at least for Musa, because you need to know some things about how Islam works and how the people of that time worked there. They all make full sense within the world that they're living in. And yes, with the two female romance characters I mentioned, Rosa and Catherine, they may seem like give an impression of a girl boss kind of attitude that a lot of people are sick and tired of seeing. But once you actually go through the story and actually like have dialogues with these characters, understand where they're coming from, you can find their flaws with them. You find that they're not as girl bossy as people want to portray them on the internet just because of one cutscene here. They're fully fleshed out characters who have these faults and flaws, problems, and worries in life, just like anybody else. And I by the end of it, I was like completely fine with all the characters. Even Musa, I thought I was gonna like eat my words a little bit with what once I started getting through with the character, but ultimately I can let that slide. It's, at least for me. I don't know about you guys when it comes to the other silly controversy. We can get to the other one there of with the quarter in Kuttenberg.
Oh yeah,
The ghetto.
I think Musa fits in there. I think he's like, it makes sense why he's there. Did not like him, and I thought the game forces you to like him. Because like the French guy, you can hate the French guy or like the French guy. You can hate or like the German guy, but you can't say anything bad about Musa. Henry likes Musa. You can't say anything bad about him. And I thought he was annoying, but he wasn't like a bad or terrible character. I thought Rosa was a bit girl bossy, but in a good way. Like it gave that option if you wanted a girl like that. I didn't like how there were times where when you take her with you to sneak back into her castle, she wants to climb the vines to help you. You can't tell her no. Like, I wanted to be like, no, you're not doing anything. You're staying here, and I'm going to pull out my sword, and I'm going to take care of the guys. Don't worry. there are times where you get the illusion of options, but there is no option. Like the game,
You're right.
the main story is very much on the rails, and it does have some forks in the roads. Like actually, it's pretty much just the end. The end of the game has some good multiple endings, but for the most part, I was disappointed that the main story is a bit on the rails, and it wasn't as influential as I wanted it to be on both sides.
Well, I mean, there's when it comes to girl bosses and having, different ethnic characters in the game. Someone like Musa, which I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't met Musa yet, so I don't really know. I can't really judge him. But what I have to say is there's a difference between having a girl boss and having a strong female character.
Mm-hmm.
So that has a reasoning for being the way that she is. Like, the interesting love, if you go into just movies and TV, you'll notice a lot of movies and TV shows from the 1980s, 1990s that had strong female characters, good explanations as why they were the way they were, and it fit and it worked. Everybody thought they were cool. Video games, almost the same kind of way. If you go back, I mean, Musa, obviously the character, the first thing I thought of when I heard about this character was, oh, they're doing a play off of Robin Hood, right? Because in Kevin Costner's Robin Hood is the first one to introduce the character who's the Black Moor, the Islamic character that comes with him into the.
It's actually funny that Eric actually calls him that. He calls him that as a slur.
Yeah,
one of the villains calls him that. Yeah.
Because it was a general. It's basically a general name for people from Africa that was just. But anyway, but yeah, the whole idea was that that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that, and people really liked that and thought it was cool when it was done that way, and I thought if they did that well, I mean that can work. It's just is that 100% historically accurate? Maybe not, but I don't. Is it something that breaks immersion? And then a lot of these things I always ask, does it break immersion enough that it's as egregious to reject? And the same thing kind of on the gay stuff that we touched earlier, which I didn't really talk a whole lot about, but if it really break immersion, and can I say no to it? If it doesn't super break immersion and I can say no to it, doesn't really bother me that much. I just move on.
I agree. I don't think Musa breaks any immersion. It's because some people do. They just see the screenshot and they think this breaks my immersion. I don't get the context, and I think they have every right to be exhausted by modern social media intercourse to just say, I don't even want to deal with it. I don't even want to buy the game. Don't want to deal with it because I'm done with the stuff, and they have every right to do that. And then there's also people that overreact to it, and that's fine too. But I think it kind of just goes down to more to pandering, because you cannot say anything bad about him, but he can say every heinous shit about you. He shits on your country. He shits on your faith. He says all these negative things about you. And what can Henry say? Why are you black? Sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. And I'm just like, stop forcing me to like this dude. He's such a fucking asshole. And it kind of does. I mean, and no, it makes sense why he's there at the same time, because he doesn't want to be with Sigismund's court. But at the same time, it's like, oh God, why am I here now? And then I feel like he should have jet at the end of the game, but he didn't. He's just like, no, he stays because of Catherine. He likes the big titty bitch. But I romanced her, so I was just like, what? Hand me the holy hand grenade! This man's gonna die! Like, fuck no, you're not taking my MILF. How dare you?
Big titty white women always bring everybody to the yard, man.
They cause so many wars.
Yeah, with Musa, I started the second I saw him over at a particular location. You'll know what I'm talking about. Shock in a particular spot at a high place. That was like, wait, why did they choose him to be a representative?
That didn't bother me. It made sense.
I was like, I felt like it was like, couldn't they pick somebody else of all people to grab him? Okay, sure, whatever. But overall for the character, like all of it, a lot of the things, his flaws and issues, like they're built up when you first meet him for sure. But the one thing I'd like irritated with me on this particular character was like the assholery stuff and the forced dialogue. But when it comes to like that controversy going on, it's really just like a over freak out, just blown way out of proportion. Like we've been saying since the beginning, there's a conversation to be had about things, but unfortunately, all the right people who can have these conversations are saying all the wrong things and sending the fucking conversation way out the window. They're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to this stuff.
A lot of it also has to do with it's a new game, it's massive.
Yeah,
and
it's
doing really well.
This is the end of the game, so like no one, even the people. I'm tired of people defending things, even though they don't have the context themselves. It's like, well, dude, this is like the end of the game. What do you know about it? Because it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, and you know, it's a new game. It's massive, and there's a certain group of people that are looking for a reason to say it's bad, just because anything new, anything that's super successful, especially in the modern times, has to be bad. There's a certain subset of people who anything past 2010 is bad.
Yeah, that's true. And to bring it back to story, like with all these characters, as controversial as they may be to individuals out there who haven't played the game or have only played a little bit of it, they did a really good job with these characters. Like even like the whole like the Jewish anti-Semitic side, everything made complete sense within the story, within the universe and the story. Like at the particular time, and I had to do a little bit of homework myself, a little bit of history homework to, see a lot of these things. Everything was very much real with what was happening. The frictions, the frustrations between the peoples, and all the chaos that was going around in that time in history. It makes complete sense to have everything that was in, and they did they did put in so much hard work to make this play out beautifully in the game itself. Like I'm just thoroughly impressed myself with what they've done with this story, and for all the the moral decisions it makes you think, looking back at your decisions, whether you regret things or not, and at the end of the game, it allows you to reflect on all these. And I would love to see more games do something like this with what they've done to the story, because it doesn't just, even though there is a railroad going on with the main story, there's not really like alternative routes. There's more detours in regards to how you get from point A to point B to point C in the main story. But this, even though that might be a little disappointing for some folks, it does not diminish the value of the story itself.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really good story. What I played of it so far, and here the thing about it is, not only is it a really good story, it runs really smooth. It's pretty well optimized, despite some of the bugs we've seen.
Unfortunately,
yeah, it's very compact, so it's hard to do that.
Yeah,
but and one thing we haven't mentioned at all is that it's freaking beautiful. It's a beautiful graphically game. I mean, I know it's a very surface level thing to talk about, but I mean, I'm running this thing. I don't have a powerful PC.
I just finished playing Avowed, and that game looks like shit. So,
so I don't have a very powerful PC, and it's difficult. And I'm running at the lowest graphics probably possible, and it still looks like a massive graphical improvement from the first game. That was made in 2018, or came out in 2018. So it's not like it's something super old. So it's definitely physically, graphical standpoint, beautiful game. Can there be improvements done on the actual functionality?
I think it's perfectly optimized, because most people don't care about graphics; they care about gameplay and story. And so the game will. So basically, nothing has ever there's no lag or delays or buffering in this game. It's simply things aren't rendered yet, and the layers come over time if it's slow to render. So for example, if you're just trying to play the game and you're in Gutenberg and all right, I gotta go buy this, I need to go buy this, I want to go repair this, oh, I forgot to go buy this, and you're running between all the stores, and there's floating windows in buildings, you're not going to care because you're trying to play the game. But if I wanted to like experience the graphics, you can kind of just wait there a minute, let everything render, hit the Alt or the Control on your keyboard, and just walk through the city, and then the graphics are huge. It's like, oh, this is when I want to enjoy the graphics, I can enjoy the graphics. If I just want to play the game, I can ignore the rendering stuff because, you know, it's not the most important thing when it comes to video games. Mechanics and story is.
Yeah, it can get away with. It definitely has more leeway to get away with Monster Hunter Wilds character like looks. And so, you know,
I haven't had issues with Monster Hunter. I need to go read those reviews.
yeah.
Yeah, it's vastly different from that. At least for me, when it comes to the graphics, I was absolutely captivated. Like because of the latitude it is from the equator, the particular climate that Bohemia is, it is very much similar and familiar to my own that I grew up with. And just to go, even like the bird sounds alone were like reminding me of times when I was a child, and just going on taking a horseback ride out into the fields and in the forest. The Appalachians were like I felt like I was back in my backyard at 7 years old. Like just looking at things and just the beauty, the farmlands, the fields, the vast lands
the
that you
random
can see.
NPCs talking.
Oh, the level of immersion, the level of effort that they put in to have these conversations going on. All the individuals, they did a better job than Cyberpunk when it comes to people's day by days. That's for damn sure.
That's what we thought we were gonna get. Dude.
Oh, okay. I'll cut them some slack. There's a fuck ton more people that they got to deal with in Cyberpunk 2077 than it is with KCD2. Regardless, there's such a significant difference with how they go and do their day by day. They sleep in certain locations. They go up, have their day, have their coffee, go off over to the stores, go do their job wherever it is, and go back over to the tavern after work's done at sunset, and then they go back home. And it all just like adds to the immersion of the graphics and fidelity of this game. It's so captivating and beautiful. You find yourself just standing there like, oh wow, this is beautiful. Like I almost had a tear to my eye at some of the scenes, and just going walking around, just going anywhere. Like the castle is. Oh freak yeah! And they did such a good. This game is all on the Crytek engine, and I mentioned this like at the beginning of my impromptu. They used this thing called voxel path tracing, and it is such a pragmatic version of ray tracing out there that it just allows. On top of it, because they've worked, because this is very much KCD 2.0, KCD 2.0, they were able to just level up everything at launch. This thing was more fluid, more beautiful, and it just it pops. It's much smoother, even on the consoles. Even though they do have their own issues and such. Everything on all platforms, there's a smoothness to it. It's a lot. I tell you guys what, it's a lot better than KCD 1 at launch. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can't celebrate the graphics enough. The sound of this game, the level of the sound, just the surround sound, moving. Yep. Oh yeah,
it's definitely one of those games that just when you open it and you load it up and you look at it, you can already tell where the money all went. That they put the money and the effort in the right places in this game.
Well, actually, the script too, because this game brags. This is like the biggest script in video game history, and honestly, not much of it is in the main story. The main story is actually kind of shorter than you think. The script goes to the side quest and just random NPCs, like guards. Like when you get caught by a guard, the guard will specifically tell you what crime you did. So there's like 10 different types of crimes you can do, and then within every 10 type of crimes, there's 3 different ways to get out of it, and there's a successful and an unsuccessful dialogue. Like that's a lot of fucking writing. Like this game, I think that's kind of like my overall, not disappointment, I guess personal disappointment. This isn't me judging the game, but this is a medieval simulator more than it is being a knight video game. So I'll get more on that later. But
100%, totally agree with you on that. Yeah. It's not about being a knight. You're not even a knight in this. You're basically a squire at best. And with you're basically going through a medieval life simulator. Whether you're just basically a commoner. Love that about this game. And yeah, that's it. Huge scripts, so many dialogue options, and it's all like set up so that they're able to have this somewhat of a mix and match when you have the day by day dialogues, like you were saying with the guards and stuff. It's absolutely fascinating. It's like old school RPGs. It's not the it's not the dumbed down BioWare like dialogue wheel that you see all the time. Whether you get and you're totally like told 100% how exactly this dialogue is going to how the NPC is going to react to this dialogue,
or the Ubisoft one that's just two choices, and one of them is like gold to progress the conversation.
Yeah.
And the other one is white just to ask more questions. It's like, why is this even here?
But sometimes that'll get you locked out of certain quests. So it is a bit of a trial and error, but I think that's what makes the game actually more replayable and more fun the second playthrough than the first, because you can see the different kind of like dialogue, like outplays and stuff like that. And one thing that they do that kind of confused me is when it gives you like a speech check for a certain skill, when it says easy, medium, hard, that is not your chances of beating it. It is simply, this is the invisible bar of where you have to be to pass it. You know what I mean? So it says very hard, but if you have like a level 30 scholar, you're not going to have issues with a very hard one because you're high level. But I'm so used to it being like, you know, like the BioWare, like it's easy because it should always say easy.
It does a reading of your skills and compares it to, yeah.
I don't like that because it feels more rewarding when it says hard and you pass it. You know, like, yeah, because I put a lot of my points in scholar. I put my points in craftsmanship. Like it feels.
And part of the reasoning, part of the reasoning is that it takes advantage of your experience from those other games.
It does.
So yeah.
You get a dopamine here, like, oh my god, I passed it, I got away with it. Like it said very hard, but it's like, oh well, you know, I have
exactly.
Makes this, but in actuality,
yeah, other games they either lock out those dialogues or you have to reach to a certain level to actually unlock those dialogues. That's really unfortunate because it just forces you into only the ways that you're permitted to. You're not allowed to fail. And this game does allow you those chances to fail. And especially with some of the conversations that can be had with the guards trying to weasel your way out of a crime, that can be really funny. Like
those are so funny.
Like
there's
the one like if there's one in particular where like if you kill an animal and the failure dialogue, I've thrown this out on Twitter. The failure dialogue is like, well, this chick, I was just walking away, minding my own business, and then this chicken just started saying mean things at me. Bastard! I was like, the hell, where's that come from? Then I hear it again. Asshole! Okay. Then I turn around to the chicken. Are you talking to me? And guess what happens? He stares right in my eyes and starts to shit. that was Henry's excuse. He was so pissed off that the bird just insulted him and shat in front of his face. He just beat the shit out of him so hard to kill him.
The woman one.
Oh, I don't think I heard the woman one before.
Oh, if you punch a woman and the guy goes like, you can't be beating women like that. And he's like, why not? I thought they liked it. I thought women liked getting beaten back in the head.
Based.
Oh my god.
So based.
Yes. Speaking of base, the religious aspect in this game, I know they wanted. There's like we were talking earlier about. There's side quests that they want to bring in. That's also a reason why the monasteries and churches are all locked out, is because they have this big side quest that they want to bring in. Either it's going to be in updates or in some sort of DLC. There's a big involvement to it, but there's even despite all that, there's still such a huge religious aspect to this game, just like in 15th century Bohemia, and it's so prevalent everywhere. Like if you want to, repent for your crimes, you have to go on a pilgrimage to do so, or you pay the fine. If you want it, everybody has this like aspect of of Christianity. The whole culture is all prevalent throughout everything.
Is like a minute long of some random priest telling you like, yeah, once upon a time there was two bailiffs and they fought and then someone died and they said, hey, well, let's not kill each other's man, we'll put a cross here. It's like, dude, this was like a minute of a dude talking just for the small percentage of people that are interested in doing a pilgrimage in a medieval game. I'm a weirdo. I like to doing them. I'm like, well, you can just do these for fun? Like, what? And I did like 3 of them, and there were 3 different stories every time. And I'm like, how many pilgrimage stories are there? Like, yeah, the side stuff in this game is what makes it great.
Yeah.
My criticism is going to be actually the main quest, honestly. what I didn't like was because Henry is a knight, right? So when he is a knight, he should be treated and acted like a knight. And we're also under like a general, Zizek, right? Like a legendary general.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that because it's with Henry in regards to his standing under Lord Hanish, he is more of a squire. That a page / squire. So he is in the caliber of the ladder of knight. He's just at the very bottom of it, and we don't get, unfortunately, we don't get to the point where he gets risen to a level that of knighthood in this game. But we do go through a story of him rising up the ranks and becoming basically standing as equals among knights.
Kind of. I don't mean like actual his like status or anything. What I mean is like more like gameplay. So, like the first game, you would like mount up and go to camps. Like, oh, there's a cumin camp over here. There's a minting camp over here. And it would be much like we're gonna get in our knight's armor and our chainmail and our sword and shields, and we're gonna go meet and we're gonna go do a fight. There's not a lot of that in this game, and what's interesting, well, there's a lot of stealth. So, for example, when you're doing the side quests, you get in your armor, you get in your chainmail, you get your helmet on, right? And then you go to the main quest, and then it's like, all right, we have to go steal something. All right, take off all your armor, put on a black shirt, put on a black hood, do the main quest. All right, cool, main quest done. Put the armor back on. Ride to the main quest. All right, time to steal something else. Then you got to take off your armor. And so they got to the point where the main game was just stealing things. It wasn't like a night where you would go in open battle and fight a lot. There wasn't a lot of fighting in this game. It's a lot of stealth and stealing and the
subterfuge and conversations and
It turns into that. It's not so much of like a knight game where you play as a knight. It's more of like a medieval, where it's basically Ocean's 11 come Deliverance. You know what I mean? Like, it turned into that at some point. I'm like, I want to be a knight, but all that is at the end. Like, the end is epic, but I have to play 100 hours of this game to get that kind of epic knight story that I wanted. But also, this takes away the freedom of play style with this game. So basically, for one, this is kind of the morale system. It's a little different. I don't like that lockpicking is officially thievery, because to progress the game, you have to have high stealth and high thievery. You are not allowed to progress the story unless you can pickpocket or break a lock. And breaking lock counts as a crime regardless if it's a main story. So that's what was really annoying. You're forced to play stealth. So, like, if you're like, all right, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to go to the Millers. I'm going to do the blacksmith main quest, right? And then I'm going to focus my attributes in strength and alchemy, and that's my play style. And the game's like, no, you got to break the lock. No, you got to stealth. And it's like,
yeah, well, trust me, I'm learning about that.
That's my biggest criticism of this game.
Yeah, I don't like sneaking around. I'm not a big stealth game guy. Ironic, because I actually have always liked Assassin's Creed growing up, but I was never big on stealth missions and things like that where I'm forced to skulk around, move between guys and hide in the bushes and things like that. So the mission where I have to escape that castle and I have to run from basically bush to bush to get out of that situation, and they force you to be over encumbered so you can't run no matter how much stuff you have on you. I did not enjoy that. I did not like that because I hate stealth. I hate doing those kinds of things. And it was a fairly large expanse of the map that I had to cover in doing that whole stealth mission. So at night, and the guys could very easily see me once they get a sight of me. So I didn't quite enjoy that particular part.
If you keep progressing the main quest, there's going to be a lot more of those. That kind of turns into the main quest. Until the very end, which you get a very epic battle, very epic conclusion. The end is fantastic.
Yeah, you do get it. Yeah, throughout there is a good share of it. You do get a lot of smaller scale battles and fights throughout the main story and such. But yeah, it does start to get to a point where there is a lot of like sneaking around because you're within the story at that point. You are in a rebellion, basically the rebels in that region, because the the Praguers, the Hungarians, Sigismund's side, they basically control everything, and you're basically doing like guerrilla warfare against them, doing one thing and another. And that unfortunately, that does involve a lot of sneaking. For the developers, they tried to ease the frustrations with that by giving the outfit system where you can have your combat and instantly switch over to your either your suave outfit for the charisma stuff or your sneaking stuff. So they tried to, make it a little easier, but people are still frustrated with these very systems, having to overcome these. I had a much easier time because I put in a good share of hours grinding out the stealth and thievery and such before I got to Kuttenberg and some of the many major plot points where you require seeking. That allowed me enough to just ease on through and have a very good time, smooth time with it. That's just for me though, because particular circumstances.
It's done well. I think the stealth in this game is very good, and it is fun, and it's okay to like it. But the thing is that the first game did a much better job having it be optional. There was always two ways, actually 3 ways. There were always 3 ways to do a side quest, like the good way, the sneaking, dishonest way, or the just fucking everything up. Like, you fucking failed, and everyone in that town hates you, and you wouldn't have access to certain side quests because everybody hated you, right? And you don't get that freedom of play style. Or maybe your Henry. If you want to make the argument of there is your Henry, there really is no Henry. It's just, or there's no your Henry. It's always stealth. You have to be a sneaky stealth thievery Henry to progress the story, and that breaks that illusion of having a play style fit a certain run like the first game did.
You know what? Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
There's one or two aspects of it that 1 or 2 points there where the sneaking is absolutely necessary, but even with there's a lot of moments where the sneaking is there. It seems like it's an absolute necessity, but the game allows you to fuck up, go into the combat, and it'll allow the story to continue to progress, even though it will lay on you the failures of not going through the sneaking, but the show will continue to go on.
But
you'll get why didn't you do it this way talk. But
hold on,
that's it.
That kind of gets into the end, because the end is cool because you have a conversation with your conscience and your parents. And so I think this is, it really feels like a gotcha from personally Daniel Favre. I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting, but it feels like a gotcha when it's kind of like, regardless of what you do, your mom will, this is what I did this morning. This morning I save scummed all the endings, and I just like did all the different outputs and endings and see what kind of endings that you get with your parents. But you have a conversation with your parents, your conscience, and they basically walk through all the decisions you made in the game and their opinions on them. So it's like, hey, you totally killed this group of innocent people. How do you feel about that? And you can be like, they deserved it, or I made a mistake, or there was no other way to do it. And it's really that, like Jono kind of talked about that. The end is really cool. Having that morale conversation with your parents is super cool. But regardless, your mom calls you a thief. Like Henry, you turned into a thief. You were a mad lad because you kept stealing from people. And it's like, but the game forces you to do that. Yeah. You can't break Lord Hapon's out. Also, killing soldiers is also a crime and counts as a civilian. Killing soldiers counts as a civilian. So when you go in your statistics, it says I killed 300 people. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Soldiers count as civilians for some reason. So it's regardless what you do, the game has this gotcha moment where like your mom's like, yeah, you're a terrible person, Henry. And it's like, wait, but I thought I did the right thing. I didn't actually do the evil thing.
Shaka. They had families.
That's what Static was saying. Like, fucking woman, shut up.
It's that Henry's parents expected to be a good Christian lad and never do any sins whatsoever. But unfortunately, that is what 99.9% of people are going to be doing when they play this game. I believe there is a dialogue option that comes up if you avoid doing that. It is the hardest thing in the world. I said this at the beginning, at the beginning when I first played this. This game wants you to sin. This game wants you to lie, cheat, and steal. Because the way of the world. You ain't got much of a choice. It's the way the world is at that time. And if you want to fast track your way back to where you were, you got to do these illegal things. And unfortunately, because the mother, oh, my poor boy, he's being such a mean person down on Earth. Yeah, it's gonna happen. But depending on how you made the major decisions throughout the main story, will determine how the ending is. Whether she, still supports you or not, for sure. Because the goodness outweighs the bad, or the bad outweighs the good, and they just walk off. There is a binary ending that
There's
that
three
happens
endings.
with that. 3 of them. Yeah.
My thing about the story is that at least this is how it was in the first part of the game that the parts of the games that I played. I don't like how they use basically capture and release as basically the main plot device at every single step of the game. Because you get captured and then you break out.
It's a lot.
Then you get captured again.
Yeah.
Then you break out. And then they just keep doing that. And it's like, let's switch it up. Let's do something else. And I don't feel like you got that in the first one. And I feel like it was kind of an easy thing for them to rely on, at least at the beginning of the story, like for this one. And I wasn't really down with that. In terms of the other stuff that you guys mentioned, I pretty much agree. I haven't gotten to the ending yet, but I'm sure I'll go through my GTA list of are you a psychopath with my mom too. So
well, what's so weird about killing soldiers counts as a civilian thing is that it really feels like there was a bunch of side quests that are incomplete in the game. Because you know how when the Hungarian soldiers start seizing the other towns around them, so if you go to a tavern and you say, hey, what's the news, bartender, and they're like, oh, those Hungarian soldiers are here, they sieged this barn. And there's a bunch of random people you can talk to where they're like, yeah, there used to be people living here, but the soldiers came and just razed everything, and everyone just left. And so if you go to these abandoned barns and homes and you kill the Hungarian soldiers, it counts as a crime and a civilian kill. And it feels like that actually should be the side quest. And here's the thing. It's the same thing with the Cumans. If you kill the Cumans in the camp, and you go back and you talk to the tavern lady who got mad at you for fighting with them, she thanks you for taking care of the Cumans. If you go to the bartender, he thanks you for killing the Hungarian soldiers. It's not a side quest, and the game says you sinned and committed a crime. And at the end, it's like, oh, well, it should be able to, the game should be able to know what's a bad guy and what's stealing and what's not stealing. Because that's what the first game did. If you killed an enemy and you looted an enemy's body, it didn't count as stealing. But if you killed a soldier or an innocent person, it counted as stealing. If you loot anything in this game, the game counts it as a crime and stealing.
So anything beyond bandits.
Well, I think the whole point of that, though, is that at the end is to be like, well, if you're going by a really rigid moral system, which we're supposed to go by, you did all these bad things. And the whole point is for you to come to the realization that maybe those bad things, it's hard to avoid them and go operate under this really rigid moral system within the bounds of what you have to do in society in this game.
If you repent with your parents, your dad says exactly that. But it still feels like I failed. It's like, okay, but no, I wanted to do the best good run I can. And it wasn't possible because the game's like, yeah, it's not possible. Sorry. It's like, well, then it feels like I failed. And that choice of choosing what morale you want to do, choosing what play style I wanted to do, was an illusion the whole time. You have to be a stealth gameplay. It felt linear.
Nihilism.
It disappointed me a bit, especially because I wanted more camaraderie, knights, getting on the horse, and going to camps and having more fights, not everything just be stealth rebel bandit stuff. But the side quest, you do get that. The side quest, you hunt poachers and you fight people, and that's so I feel like the KCD2 has a very good ending, right? Because I know a lot of weird people that they won't play a game. They won't even. I know people who have been telling them they'll play KCD1 forever, and they won't play it until they know that the ending of 2 is good. For some reason, because they're afraid of being disappointed. They're like, I don't want to play a game. First one be good, the second one sucks.
Well, that ties into your Game of Thrones comparison.
Yeah, that's literally it. It's literally Game of Thrones. Like, well, let me know how the last season goes before I even get into it, because I don't want to be disappointed.
I want to watch House of the Dragon. I know how Game of Thrones is going to end. It's just going to lead to that. Yeah.
But the ending is good, and I think everyone would agree that the side quest is what make this game great. Exploration, the side quests are way more fun than the main quest, even though the main quest has really interesting characters.
Is there anything else you guys want to go over before we get into final thoughts? At all?
Freak! When we covered sound, graphics, the gameplay, and the combat itself. That those were all like good. It's got flaws. It's a little dumbed down for the broader audience, but overall they're still pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty. We pretty much nothing missing. Anything else? What do you guys think?
There's gonna be a KCD3, I think.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
So
it's a tough call on that.
So for some reason, the first game and the second game, they like to pay a lot of homage to what's that preacher's name again? Godwin tells you about him. No. God John Hunish. Dang, I forgot his name. Godwin tells you about him, and you recite his gospel.
Oh, the young preacher that's supposed to be the young
preacher guy.
Yeah, preaching radically or whatever.
Yeah, he's like he's preaching against the Catholic Church, because it's like, why do you need the church to pray to God? You could just do that yourself. They just want your money, like that kind of preaching. And so there's a cool camp that you encounter where it's an actual Prague professor, and you bring it up to him, and he's like, oh yeah, like we're on the hunt for him. He's gonna hang, son. If you hear anybody talk about him, make sure you report it to the guards. And that's what historically happens. That preacher gets killed by the nobles, and this whole like cultural revolution happens against the Catholic Church. That is what comes after these historical events. And then Radzig also says, oh, Adventure's going to catch up with us eventually. Don't worry. I think they got one more in them. Even though in a live stream with Warhorse, they said that Daniel Varva thinks that games, studios, they keep making too many games. So he doesn't want to keep making the same game over and over again. So it could end with 2. But I highly anticipate this game to be a 3.
I'll tell you this right now. After the financial success of this game,
there's no choice.
Yeah, they even if Warhorse Studios doesn't want to do it, they're gonna find somebody to do it.
Well, he can make a new game. It's gonna be like from the creators of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Oh yeah, he'll probably do something new. They'll probably do something new before they do a third one of this. But,
I would like to see him just do another medieval game in a different setting. Like, you know what I mean? I would like that too, but I don't know. Maybe he's bored with medieval now at this point. You know how
he might go do something else. A lot of times with genre makers of any kind of media, whether it's TV shows, movies, video games, a lot of times if they make one, whether it's sci-fi or fantasy, they immediately go into the other because they want to prove they can do something radically different. So I wouldn't
James
be surprised
Gunn with Superman.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it'd be something more futuristic or sci-fi.
Dev studios always want to try to show the world that they're not just a one-trick pony, and it's respectable. At least in the industry these days, there's a lot of developer studios out there. You want to show the world that you can. You can hop, skip, and jump. Run and chew bubblegum at the same time and such. But you can respect that. For me, at least, when it comes to the final thoughts, for me, this game is absolutely phenomenal. I'm just thoroughly impressed. It does help it that the fact that I love this era of history, all the knighthoods, valor, honor, all the aspects within the Game of Thrones stuff. The game, it is just I'm so happy with the immersion in this game, and because of that, the game is absolutely phenomenal in my experience of it, which allowed me in just a single playthrough to go. I'm like 119.8 hours on just a single playthrough. That is a lot for just a single game, and that fits well within my rule of thumb with the amount of money that I've spent on this game. An hour for every dollar you spend on it. I got my money's worth out of it, so I can't praise this high enough. Even with all the bugs and issues, at least fortunately for me, I must be lucky. I was able to avoid a lot of those bigger bugs, even though I did experience a lot of bugs. fucking mud at the door. Oh man, that drove me to a wall. He's just standing there being a good boy, but God, I can't get out. I got nowhere else to get out from. So, oh my goodness. Yeah, there's a lot of bugs and issues with this game that are hopefully gonna come, be fixed with updates sooner or later, and a bunch more content. We're talking about KCD 3. I'm wondering what they're gonna do about extra content about this game, if they're gonna add more than what they've already decided to do with the extra DLC. Because I'm pretty sure they're gonna do at least 3 extra DLCs, major DLC packages, like they did with KCD 1. I'm thoroughly impressed. Cannot recommend it enough to everybody who has a liking or like appreciation for this era of history. The kind of stuff that goes on with this War of Roses, Game of Thrones stuff. It'll be your bread and butter. It'll bread your butter.
Yeah.
It'll butter your bread. Sorry.
This game totally has an end game to it, because like you said, like there's carpenters that there are shops that you can't talk to. There's a DLC where you're gonna open up your own blacksmith. It's like there's gonna be an end game where you own a house, and like so it takes an hour and 20 or 120 hours to beat this game, and then you can just live in this world for another 60 hours until you get bored. Like it's gonna be insane, man. That's a lot of content.
Yeah, I'd say just to close for me, I mean, compared to all RPGs, old and new and all that, I put it at somewhere like 8.5. When compared to just the modern stuff, is a 9.5 easy. I mean, it really hits all the marks. Is there a little bit of bugginess, a little bit of brokenness? Yes, but that's almost unavoidable at this point, unfortunately.
It doesn't bother me.
I do have some minor gripes, as I said, but yeah, it's really phenomenal. I recommend everybody check it out.
Cool. Well, on that note, thank you guys for coming on. Appreciate your time. We'll have the links to everyone in the comments section, in the pin comment, and all that good stuff. And thank you everyone for watching. Go play Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and let me know what you think about it. And
play the first one. First one's great.
If there's one thing to take away from this poor man got covered in feces from a fake Christian dyke and a gay furry. That's the one takeaway.